置身时代茫茫的巨轮，你知道青春的光影转瞬即逝，所以你奋不顾身追逐藏在心里的白日梦，希望留下存在的印记。但焦虑的孤独不曾离开，白天你是时代恩宠的后浪，夜晚卸下战衣，疲惫悄悄潜进心底。你我徘徊在困惑之中，但说实话，我们都想过放弃，但又无法安抚内心呐喊的声音。抬头仰望升起点点星光的夜晚，才发现我们真的热爱这个世界。纵使停下了脚步，希望从未走远。你曾感叹我们的人生没有写好的剧本，我们敢于把自己摔破，又重新再站起来，并从未后悔走出的每一步。每个新鲜的伤痕组成真实的你我，即便泪水模糊了双眼，我们依旧用好奇的触角感受着时代的变幻，以平凡的双手拥抱非凡的青春。我们不断从零开始，标新立异，不随大流，学习的同时也不忘挑战，为无解的现实寻找天马行空的答案，用手中的黑笔画出五彩斑斓。我们希望可以从有限的今日飞向无限的明天。前路漫漫，但当我们举起火炬，手中的光便是时代。我是大学生梁浩哲。2021牛津中国论坛，等你就位。
2020年教会了我们嬉皮笑脸面对人生的难，而笑这件事也在被我们重新定义。受脱口秀大会等线上综艺的加持，喜剧在国内迅猛发展。而在英国，依托于酒馆文化的 stand up 则面临着新的挑战。无论中西，不论形式，喜剧所带来的共情在疫情冲击和丧文化的浸润下显得格外珍贵。这一次，我们想和国内外的喜剧人们好好聊聊那些没有被麦克风听到的故事。刻板印象、中西差异、疫情危机、同辈压力，我们将用喜剧背后的趣味思考，为这个时代的痛点和笑点拍灯。
Oh, okay, cool. I think we're ready to start streaming. Oh, good?
Yay.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Exciting. 大家好，非常欢迎来到牛津中国论坛的喜剧板块。我是该板块的策划人魏舒。非常有幸今天能邀请到4位来自于不同时区的喜剧艺术家们来为我们分享关于笑的思考。本板块将全程以英文进行，并有实时的中英双语字幕，让每一位嘉宾和观众都享受其中。我们相信无论国籍，不论人种，笑这件事本身就是一门共通的语言。Hello everyone, welcome to the comedy panel of Oxford China Forum 2021, themed let's talk about laughter, seriously. It's the last panel of this year's forum event, but it's actually the first ever time we try to deep dive into the comedy art. I'm Shu Wei, the director and host today for the comedy panel. I'm currently a first-year PhD student from Oxford University, researching in psychiatry. Comedy is not therapy, but it can be therapeutic. Promoted by the online program in China, stand-up comedy became the new fashion of entertainment among the Chinese young generation. Meanwhile, in the UK, where the stand-up comedy is partially neutral by the pop culture, is facing the new challenges. We do believe it's never a better time to talk about laughter and the comedy science, especially after we all experienced the year-long stimuli of 2020. And today we're really lucky to have 4 international comedians joining us to help us unpack all this witty insight and human condition behind the comedy scene. So really welcome. So today's panel is consist with 3 sessions. It will be the individual speech, and then it will follow by the roundtable discussion. And in the end, we will have the Q&A with our audience. So before we dive into each comedian's story, I'd like to give a little bit introduction about each of our brilliant comedians. And by having the privilege of being a comedy panel, I think we're allowed to, mess around with the panel a bit to keep it more lightweighted and interactive. I like to give introduction of each of you, but I will also like to hand the virtual mic to you to say hi to our audience in the end and tell us what job would you be doing if you were never work in comedy. So start with ladies first. I'll have Yuriko first. So Yuriko Kotani is a Japanese comedian based in London. She was nominated as One to Watch by Time Out, and she's also the award winner of BBC New Comedy Award. She's been performed and write for BBC and also the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So it's really nice to have you here today, Yuriko. Do you want to say hi to our audience and tell us what do you think you would be doing if you would never try comedy?
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's well. It's hello and good evening, isn't it? People from all over the world watching. So if I'm not doing stand-up comedy, what would I be doing? That's a great question because I've been thinking about it for the whole lockdown because all the live shows go wiped out. I'm happy to do any job. I'd love to try. Yeah, I'd love to try. Okay, that's not a good answer, but yes, I'm still figuring out. And hopefully all the live shows and comedy will come back so that I don't have to think about it.
That's great. Welcome.
All right.
Have you. Yeah. I mean, still working on progress. That's the best answer, I think. It's even better than a concrete answer. So moving to Olga Koch. Hopefully I pronounced the name right. I've been practiced this whole morning. So Olga Koch is a British-Russian actress, programmer, and also stand-up comedian. So she, as a computer science graduate from New York University, have this special sense of geeky humor, which really make her a quite special star in the UK comedy scene. And so her show, Fight, was nominated as the Best Newcomer Award for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Aside that, Olga is actually one of our Oxford alumni doing a social science of internet with Oxford. So as we talked before, today's session is actually a hands-on practice of social science of internet. So hopefully enjoying the practice, but anyway, we were enjoying to have you here. So Olga, do you want to say hi to our audience and tell us, what do you think you will be doing if there's no comedy?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for such a wonderful intro. Genuinely, I wish my father was here to hear all of my achievements. I am Olga. That was covered. And I think if comedy wasn't around, I would have to be a computer scientist, though admittedly, probably not a very good one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, it really sounds like a downgrade for some reason. I don't know how should I feel about it, but really nice to have you here. And next, moving on, we have Ben Target. So Ben is a multi-award winning social artist, a comedy performer, and also a comedy educator. Actually, that's how me and Ben know each other. So he used to be my instructor for the amazing Angel Comedy Workshop. So he's really known for using audience interaction, visuals, and gameplay to explore the constructive narrative and will-be behind the comedy scene. He was also the Leicester Macro Comedian of the Year back to 2011. So Ben, really nice to see you here. Do you want to say hi to our audience and tell us what job would you be doing if you were not in comedy?
It's lovely to be here. Hi, everyone. Hi, Shu. Thanks for the kind words. I think, like Olga, I very much wish my mother was here to hear them. Sorry, not Olga's father, but maybe the two of them could sit together. I was actually studying medicine, and I did that to appease my parents' expectations of my future, and I dropped out to do comedy. So I think I did that because I always wanted to be an artist, and I now am. So I'd like to keep doing that, please.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Yeah. I don't know. I feel a little bit sad. It's such a loss because of comedy. We lost a potential good doctor. But as a lucky side, we have you today here to join our panel. So it's really a pleasure. And last, let's move to Joe Wong, Huang Xi. So really nice to have you here. And I even don't know what to start to introduce you because Joe is a biochemistry PhD, is also a patent holder of biological research patent. But after all this title, he decided to pursue a full-time comedy career from Boston. So really thanks to your brave and confusing decision, we are lucky enough to enjoy your great show. So one of the show is Joe roasting another man who also called Joe, named Joe Biden, in the White House corresponding dinner. And also since 2013, Joe's back to China to explore this witty humor and empathetic science in the motherland. And he's currently hosting a popular show with CCTV now called Is It True? So hi, Joe. Really nice to have you here. Do you want to say hi to our audience and tell us what would you be doing if you were not in comedy?
Oh, hi, Shu. Thank you for having me here. Hi, everybody. It's a great honor to be in this forum. And that's a really interesting question. And I would say that if I wasn't doing comedy, I might become a writer because I always try to find a medium to express myself. And I didn't have the courage to switch to philosophy or writing when I was in college. But after working for a number of years, I might just do that. In the condition that there's no stand-up comedy, I'll probably just do some kind of writing, I guess.
That's great. Really feel lucky. Like this is not a condition, and we do have stand-up comedy, and we also have a stand-up comedian panel. How great it is! So thanks everyone. Thanks Joe. Thanks Olga. Thanks Yuriko. Thanks Ben for joining. So now I think we will move in our first session, which is basically the individual speech to help us understanding your story a bit more. So Joe, as we just mentioned, as someone you've have like really in-depth insight and hands-on experience both in the Western and Chinese comedy scene, we're really excited to hear your experience of kind of like a first-hand insight about the stand-up comedy ecology in China now, especially it's become such a involving entertainment these days. So I will hand the virtual microphone to you, your stage, Joe.
Okay, thank you so much. Finally, it's my turn. Just kidding. It's a great honor to be in this forum, to be honest. Before I went to America to pursue my PhD degree, I actually memorized the Oxford Dictionary 8 times. So this is a true story. I still remember holding the Oxford Dictionary in the subways in Beijing, trying to memorize every word in the dictionary. And but by the time I went to America, I just assumed that everyone knows every word in the dictionary. So I ended up talking to people like, oh, I feel lugubrious today. People have no idea what I was talking about, you know. And on the other hand, even though I studied English really hard, once I was in the US, I remember the professor was doing roll calling and he called my name. But I realized that I didn't learn how to say "dao" in English. It means I don't know. I didn't know what I'm supposed to say to show that I was there. So I have to try to remember what the speaker says in this Beijing subway when it's approaching a subway station. So I said arriving, which means, you know, I'm on my way, but I wasn't quite there yet. You know, so there's a lot of cultural clash, you know, language problems when I was in the U.S. And also before I delve into comedy, I just want to take 1 minute to all the Asians in America who are suffering from the racism and violence that's happening in America throughout the whole year 2020, and especially in recent couple of weeks. And a lot of Asian women are afraid of even going to a grocery store or take a walk in their neighborhood now. And the fear and terror is very palpable in America toward Asians. So, you know, I wish Ban Ki-moon was here because this is clearly a UN human rights issue that we cannot address in this comedy forum, but I still want to just bring it out. One of the reasons I brought this up is because whatever is happening to the Asian American community it's just horrible. But on the other hand, I'm not surprised because when I was working in the US and doing stand-up comedy in the US, I just know the racism has always been there. And on American stand-up comedy stage, you can say the word chink and Chinaman, fine. People are still laughing in the crowd. But they will never say the N-word. They know it's wrong, but it's okay to attack Asian people. And if you want to use comedy to fight racism, they got really angry. The first time I brought race issue in America, some white comedian even poured water on me because they were so angry. They believe that racism is what white people did to blacks and Jews. The Asians are not even in the picture. So it was pretty miserable from the beginning. But most people don't quite know this. And things got even worse after Trump. So by 2019, 2020, I would say 30% of the time I go to a comedy club, I have to get into an argument or a fight because the comedian's using Asian slurs or they're telling like bad Asians eating dog jokes. It's really miserable for me because I go there to tell jokes and have a good time with everybody. But if somebody says stupid stuff like that, I can ignore it. But if I ignore it, I know they're going to say the same thing to other people too. So I have to address it. And if I address it, it's just not a comedy show anymore. They're like, oh, it's freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. So it's getting really difficult. And I know I appreciate freedom of speech. And my idol is George Carlin. But then sometimes they take that spirit to the other direction. You know, they just openly say a lot of racist things toward Asians, and people seem to be fine with it. And I just wanted to bring this up. This is a big issue in American comedy. And even after I achieved some success, I went to Hollywood. I was told in my face so many times, they're like, "Oh, we don't want to have Asian family shows, or we don't have Asian sidekicks." Very specific. And I asked why. They were like, "Oh, Margaret Cho show failed 30 years ago." They would never say to a white guy, "Oh, you know, we can't have white person on our show because, you know, Matthew Perry's show got canceled." But they just say this to my face. Even my manager at the time feel bad. He was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. This is not what America's like." That's kind of funny, but that's exactly what I see. And so I went back to China back in 2013. This is the amazing thing of how fast comedy is developing in China. When I was in Beijing in 2013, there's one comedy club in a city of 23 million people. They have one show every week or even every month. And now there are at least 10 different comedy clubs putting on shows every night of the week. It's pretty amazing. And in America, I just feel I'm a comedian pursuing comedy. But in China, I feel that I'm part of a movement because stand-up comedy wasn't even a thing even like 8-9 years ago. I still remember 7 years ago after I went to this open mic show, there were about 6 or 7 Chinese comedians. We huddled together right next to a trash bin. And they were asking me, hey, how are the comedy shows run in America? So I told them, oh, what are the open mics look like? What are the professional shows look like? And now it's they had a little tally. There were like 20 to 30 different cities in China that have stand-up comedy clubs. And it's very interesting. I would say 2 things about stand-up comedy in China right now. One is the diversity. You can do Chinese stand-up, you can do English stand-up. And there's also a comedian in Shanghai who can do stand-up comedy in Japanese. And the audience is also very diverse. On any given night, you can probably see an American guy laughing right next to an Iranian guy in the audience, which that's a scene you will never see in an UN meeting, by the way. And another form of diversity is the form of comedy that's being performed in China. There's the stand-up comedy, there's crosstalk, also Japanese mancai. I don't know how to say that word in Japanese. And of course, improv sketch. So it's just blossoming right now. And diversity is one big characteristic. Another one is the opportunities. You know, I always say to people, if you're a young person starting your comedy career, the best place to do it right now is in China, because I spent a lot of time in the US. In America, if you want to have like 5 minutes of material on TV, you have to work 8 to 10 years to get there. But in China, because the stand-up comedy scene is so new, you know, you see young people doing it for half a year or 2 years, and they're already like big stars. So it's a pretty exciting time for comedy in China. Thank you. That's about my time. Sorry, I probably ran slightly over time.
No, thank you. I will give a round of applause by myself, and I'm the only one who.
Thank you.
Really, thanks for sharing, Joe, and also thanks for the unexpected human touch behind your presentation. As you mentioned, some like sensitive topic, but it's actually all about human condition. I think that's also how we agreed comedy is about. It's not only about how to make a punchline hit. It's actually about how to use a joke to dissolve some bias. It could be social bias, could be racial bias. So it's really nice to hear your story. Thanks again.
Oh, thank you.
Talking about using comedy to dissolve bias, I think Ben Target probably also be one have like lots of story to share, because I know Ben, you run the comedy workshop. It's basically using comedy as a social tool to help people kind of like facing or learn how to collaborate with other people or even themselves. So I will hand the virtual mic to you now, Ben, to help us share your insight about how you use comedy as a social art. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated hearing everything Joe had to say. And as he mentioned regarding the extreme challenge of being an Asian comedian performing in the US with white comedians challenging him and behaving in appalling ways. As Joe mentioned, he is he is just sharing his truth. And it's not just that he's sharing his truth, it's that he's sharing a truth that in many ways we all see and we all know is there. And in bringing it into the space of stand-up comedy, where you can directly address an audience, there's this tremendous power of being able to have a conversation quite openly, where in other situations, say the workplace, you might have to hide what you really see. And I suppose that's the place that I start from when I teach stand-up. The idea of art is to share your experience of the human condition. At no other point in time, as far as I'm aware, with my very limited understanding of physics, has anybody seen the world through your eyes? So it's such a gift for each and every one of us to stand on stage and say what we see. And I think that is what attracted me to teaching in the first place. It's not just a love of storytelling, it's a love of hearing stories. It's a love of being interested in other people. Every time I go to see a performer, I get to see the world through their eyes in a way that I may never experience. So I feel my role as a teacher is just to facilitate that by actively encouraging people to commune with themselves, to go about every day acutely observing the world, really tapping into what do I think, what do I feel about being me in this situation? Because comedy, I think, it's innate. It's sort of universally present. It's there in everything if you really look for it. But beyond that, deeper than just the jokes, is the autobiography. And that is, I think, the thing that I encourage students to gravitate towards, because the result of it really is a long form exploration of life lived, rather than just a short form, oh, I can write a joke now. I know how to use these rules to make a surprise which gets people laughing. You know, you can read about how to do that on the internet, but to really delve into the self and to really see the self for who you are and to be able to communicate that clearly, I think that's extraordinary. And I think what's amazing about stand-up comedy is its accessibility. Yes, there are many issues, without a doubt, in our community at large regarding unfair practice and vetting of who can be on stage. But certainly at the open mic level, it is an art form which you don't need a degree to do. You don't need to have a studio to do it. You don't need expensive musical equipment. You don't need planning permission. You can just get on stage and speak to an audience, and then get up on stage the next night with a new idea and put it in front of an audience and see what the reaction is and keep coming back to it. And I think that breadth of human expression within stand-up, that breadth of human experience within stand-up is just an undeniably beautiful thing. So to hear that it's not just an art form that is rich and deep here in the UK, in the US, but is growing around the world, in China, in other places. My friend Katya, for example, went back to Greece and set up a stand-up comedy club, and it's now again this brilliant, bright new art form. I'm just totally in love with it. And I suppose that's all I have to say right now.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. It's really great. And then I especially like the word used for the accessibility, because that's, I think, one point I feel like stand-up comedy is really attractive, because it allows older people to share a storytelling, allow older people to be a good listener. And I think it's not only about the accessibility gift for the performer is also for the topic itself. And I know, Olga, you've been writing a few shows about quite serious topic, and it's always hard to write, like show about serious topic. And I think today you're here, like we're lucky to have you to basically help us to share how to make serious subject sounds a bit silly, and also the complex concept less daunting through this like science of humor. So I'll hand the mic to you, Olga.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much to Ben and to Joe. Everything you said was wonderful, and very honored to be in the same lineup as all these people. I'm just gonna time myself so I'm all organized. So hi everyone, my name is Olga, as that was established. Before I get into what I want to talk about, just wanted to give some context about my background. I was born and raised in Russia. I then moved to the United Kingdom to go to an international school. Then I went to the US, and then I came back to the UK. And specifically when I was a teenager, the 5 minutes that I'm meant to be talking is when my room becomes a nightclub. So as I was saying, I moved to the United Kingdom, and specifically when I was a young teenager, around 13, 14, I had this sort of weird awakening and rude awakening of sort of like Western culture hitting me like a bus. So I had a lot of preconceived notions about sexuality, about gender roles. That came from Russia, and I had to unlearn and deprogram for myself if I wanted to sort of like live and fit in with all my peers from the quote unquote West. And I remember distinctly that the only thing that could change my mind or even open my eyes to a more progressive sort of future, and I came from quite a traditional family. I'm not really blaming it on Russia. I'm blaming my how conservative I was on my very traditional parents. And so the way that my mind was changed wasn't through people sitting me down and telling me, or through like reading like very serious books. It was through comedy and through American sitcoms. And that was the only way I really remember changing my mind, because my views were sort of like laughed at. And I feel like we always, I don't want to sweep and say that we all think this, but I think we underestimate comedy as a source of information and knowledge because we think of it as so light. And in reality, I was reading a academic paper about this earlier this week, genuinely, where it said that people who get their news from satirical news shows are as informed as people who get their news from the news. And so I think because you sort of package it in laughter or comedy, it's not less valuable as an information source. And that's sort of where my motivation comes from, because I've written 3 shows as a comedian, and the first one was about the Russian economic privatization. The second one was about computer science, and the third one was about immigration. And all 3 of those topics aren't necessarily very funny, but I really, really believe in comedy as a way to deliver that information and to teach people something. And I think there's 3 reasons why comedy as a way to teach people something is powerful. First of all, is because it's entertaining. And so people don't there's no drop off. People don't get bored. People don't lose their attention span. It's really fun. So people don't sort of doze off at any point, at least if I'm doing my job right. The second reason why comedy is great as for information delivery and for knowledge is because it's not condescending or alienating. I think specifically in academia, a lot of the time things feel inaccessible because they're said in very fancy words or delivered by people who take themselves very seriously. So a lot of people don't even begin to try to learn something because the barrier to entry is so high. And because comedy is so casual, and because a lot of the time the comedian is sort of happy to admit that they're themselves and are an idiot, it's easier and more accessible to learn something from a person who says, well, I don't know everything, but here's what I do know, which is probably not something your college professor would ever say. And I think the third reason is that comedy structurally provides devices that are more accessible than other fields. I always think of jokes as analogies. And a lot of the time you understand things through analogies, and then the analogies comedians can draw can be drawn to very like everyday things that, again, like an academic or a professor won't really bring up their everyday experiences. Whereas comedy can be like, this is like this. And then sort of it's a light bulb moment and everyone in the audience goes, oh my God, it is like this thing that I know and understand and have experienced as well. So I think the power is there. I know myself how often I've learned from other comedians, and how if I gravitate to any sorts of knowledge, it will be like a podcast that's hosted by a scientist and a comedian, or whether it's like a casual TED talk, because that's where I will go in order to learn something. And I really, really hope, fingers crossed, that someone out there has like seen me do my shows, and maybe that was the reason that they Googled the Russian privatization that evening. And then that means that my job would be done. And that's exactly 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Olga. It's a nice talk. And yeah, like when your clock is ringing, I feel it's like, oh, time to open a microwave. But it's just like the whole speech is just so empathetic, and it's a shame like your father is not here, but no worries, we will send a video after. And I especially like the saying like comedy is a knowledge. I think that's such a kind of like such a profound sentence, and you manage once again to use a very witty way to tell us this type of reflective sentence. So well done. And moving to our next and the last guest, which is Yuriko. So she is humble and honest enough to share us some of her firsthand experience of doing stand-up by using a second language in a second culture. So Yuriko, I will hand the mic to you for you to carry on your storytelling.
Thank you, Shu. Yes, Joe, Ben, Olga, oh my God, everyone's absolutely fantastic. And yes, it's such an honor to be on this panel, so thank you very much. Yes, I am from Japan, but I'm based in the UK. So I put this sakura cherry blossom here to have a feel that, yes, the spring is coming. I think it's, yeah, cherry blossom season in Japan now, but I'm not quite sure, but you know, it's fine. So yes, yes, before I do my my session, I just want to let you know that I've been speaking in English for many years, but still like this. So yes, you know what? I just gave up. Like before, I thought I should be perfect. Like I should speak in a perfect RP English for, you know, to communicate or to do something. But you know what? No, just be you. And I think it's the best way to talk to people. Just if you want to connect with people, just it's not about how you, it's about what you want to say. So yes, I do stand-up comedy in the second language, which is tough. And even this panel show, I'm so nervous, and I'm sweating, and I put this thingy and stuff. But yes, it is tough. However, I'm doing it because I really love doing comedy so much. It's, as Ben said, it's the way to express myself, my feelings, or if I face any sexism or racism, I express it on the stage, and we laugh at it together, and which is absolutely beautiful. And it's really hard, but when the jokes I wrote and it works, and I get the huge laugh, and I get such a rewarding feeling. So I'm doing it. And but first of all, I found that it's quite tough, because not just because of the language, but also the cultures are different. For example, first of all, stand-up comedy. What is stand-up comedy? It's just, you know, because in Japan, I grew up watching, I think Joe mentioned manzai. So in Japan, the major comic style is manzai, which is like a double act. So two people have conversation, and then one is usually a funny person, and then the other one is straight, like a man, woman, and then just have a like a banter. Do you call it banter? I'm not quite sure. So for me, just one person doing setup and punchline, I just couldn't understand it. But when I was watching it doing this art form in the comedy clubs in Britain, I just blew my mind. And also, but having said that, in Japan we have a thing called the comedy style called rakugo, which is more traditional comedy storytelling by one person. So it's like I guess it's quite closer to stand-up, but they use sensu, Japanese hand fan like this, but I don't know if this is correct. Maybe different color. I have no idea, but as an audience, I love watching it. And also they use tenugui, which means a Japanese hand towel, like this, which is a tea towel, because I couldn't find it in Britain. So but it's not this at all. But yeah, so they use like these two tools, and they have amazing stories. And differences, so stand-up is standing up, but rakugo is sitting on stage. So that's the difference as well. And another difference is, so rakugo storytellers might be telling their original stories, or there could be the same story that have been passed on through many years by different rakugo storyteller. Whereas in stand-up, everything has to be original. And also another difference I noticed is, so in Britain, there are so many comedy nights around the country. And if you want to try, you can book yourself to local open mic nights and give it a go, which is just fantastic. That's something that I didn't think we really have in Japan. So because I don't do a comedy in a Japanese circuit, so I don't know much, but average Japanese person, I wouldn't hear about any open mic nights, or I've never heard anyone say, oh, let's go to see comedy tonight. So if I really want to go see professional comics on stage, I would probably have to go to big cities like Osaka or Tokyo. So Joe said in China there are like open mic nights, and now it's like rising, and it sounds so exciting. And also, oh my God! So a few years ago, I went to a comedy club in Tokyo, and there was a huge difference. I noticed was so it was on, the show was on during the day, and with usually comedy shows happens at night in Britain, isn't it? And also I remember that the room was bright, like it's not dark and lights on comics. It was like a bright room, and some audience members were like wearing the masks. And I thought, oh my God, I cannot, like, how comics can see they are laughing. But then now I know after this, and it's gonna be, lots of people wearing masks all over the world. So maybe, that club was ahead of the time. Anyway, and also in Britain, they, audience or comics drink alcohol at night. And I watch comedy, but when I watched the comedy show in Japan, I didn't see many people drinking alcohol. But it could be cultural cultural difference because when I came to the UK for the first time, and I saw people drinking pints in pubs at lunchtime, and then during the week, and I was in shock. So it's the culture difference as well. Anyway, so I guess as a Japanese person doing stand-up comedy outside of Japan is rare, I believe. And I talked about this during my Edinburgh show when we had the Edinburgh show. So in Japan, we have a proverb saying the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So it means that if you do something different and people wouldn't like it. So I find it very difficult mentally to do things that no one had ever done before. But I ignored all of that, and then I kept going, and then I do something I really love as my career, which is just magical. But that was before pandemic, so anyway, so yes, so doing something or stand up or anything in second language is tough, but in my case, laughter comes from the same thing. We see animal video or baby videos or silent videos, and no need for any words, and people still laugh. So I think that in deep down, no matter where you are from or what language you speak, we can laugh with the same thing. And but then as we get older and we see or hear things, and then sometimes a prejudice and preconception dominate you, and people think, or I think, we are different from others, or something like that. And but then comedy is the way to crack it and make us realize it is silly and laugh together. So when I won the BBC New Comedy Award in 2015, I'm blagging. So I was over the moon, and that I could win something like that. I never thought I could, but most importantly, it broke my prejudice and a preconception towards myself and everyone, which is like, people don't accept me because I'm not from here, or people don't accept me because I have the accent, and so on. I was completely wrong. I was the one who had a prejudice mindset. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuriko. I really appreciate the brevity and also the self-challenge behind of doing stand-up comedy by a second language. I can relate a lot. And same as you say, I think the comedian's job is basically, or you either reinforce some stereotype or create attention, and then you break it to make people really get the true thoughts behind. It could be some bias or could be some stereotype. So I think that's all the good thing about comedy. I mean, so thank you. Thanks everyone for sharing this amazing individual speech. It's like so hard to follow up as a host. I was like, wow, okay. Like, you really take me time to think about how to compliment in the most genuine way, because there's so many things I want to say. But without wasting time, let's move to the roundtable discussion, because I'm sure our audience is even more excited about all our discussion about the questions which haven't been heard by the microphone yet. So let's start with something a little bit relaxed, but also quite important. So I'd like to ask you guys, what or who really makes you laugh outside of the comedy scene lately. So maybe start from Ben.
Well, I've spent most of this lockdown in my bedroom, which looks onto the back garden, and I've been putting out bowls of food for the stray cats. And what really makes me laugh is the sitcom that is going on between all these cats as they battle in my garden for supreme dominance.
That's really a cute answer. Yeah, so how about Yuriko? What make you laugh lately?
Okay, I'm quite close to Ben, but so I go for a walk and I see the squirrels, many squirrels nowadays. And yes, I think they're now more like maybe trusting people now, maybe. I don't know, I'm not quite sure, but they're quite close to humans. And before, I think they run away, but they're close to me. And I had eye contact. That was the moment I laughed, like, oh, you saw me, I saw you, squirrels, yeah.
Thank you. I didn't imagine the answer can become like a short clip of comedy, like your energy, Yuriko. And how about you, Joe? You also have like an animal-related story about the time you laughed recently? Oh, Joe, you may muted yourself.
Oh.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay, I thought you muted me, but anyway, I'm kind of like Olga. I'm a big sitcom fan. So like during the lockdown, I watched a lot of old episodes of, The Big Bang Theory or Super 99. And the shows that I kind of knew, but then never got to really watch. So I really enjoyed that and got some really good laughs, both from the funny lines and also the stories. I'm always amazed by how well these stories are put together. Yeah, that's my major joy during the lockdown.
That's great to know. And how about Olga?
Yeah.
What made you laugh lately?
So about every week, I would say, I like sign up to a new free trial of a new fitness service. And so the thing that makes me laugh is just how extremely enthusiastic every instructor is, because they're speaking directly to you, and they're always like, "Do it for me." So I find them very, 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 very funny, because I just realize that they're sitting alone in a studio talking to a theoretical person who's just sitting on a couch and eating popcorn and watching them do squats. So that's that.
Thank you for sharing. But still, shout out to all this like a fitness, like a fitness instructor. They're taking care of our physical health, and you guys are taking care of our mental health for some sort. So moving to next question, because also from Joe, you're sharing, and also Yuriko, we're talking a lot about how the culture inside can bring like different perspective of comedy performance. So I think it's actually very interesting, at least for myself, or I'm sure our audience, to know what do you think is the best and the worst part brought to you by your native culture on your stand-up work. So maybe I will let Ben to start with, because Ben, I know you've also living in different places. You don't like you grow up in Singapore, but I know you grew up in Singapore, also moving around to Indonesia, Netherlands, USA, and now based on London here. So what's your opinion of what is the best and the worst bring now by your native culture when you grow up as a kid to your comedy work today?
That's an interesting question, because I'm not really sure what my native culture is. I mean, I come from a line of French Huguenots who were expelled from France for their religious beliefs, and Irish travelers. So I suppose maybe my native culture is itinerancy, traveling around. And so I suppose the best thing that's brought me is curiosity in others, go and do the thing, be amongst people, taste the thing, visit the place, learn the language. And I suppose the worst thing is the prejudices that I grew up, I suppose, off the back of European imperialism and colonialism, is probably entitlement. I'm constantly having to check myself for when I think that I deserve something or maybe am better than other people, just because of the body I was born into.
Thank you for sharing. And how about you, Joe? In terms of like the best and worst bring to you by your native culture for the stand-up comedy? And I think you are self-muted again. Also,
actually,
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm sorry about
sorry. Okay, my turn. Okay, no, I'm just saying maybe we can just try to unmute ourselves because according to our tech team, we're doing a good job with no background noise, which is very special for the online panel. So I think we can just keep all our mic open to make the round table more like a round table. So sorry for disturbing you, Joe. So what do you think is the best and the worst?
Well, the best is I could do something. I guess there are certain ways that Chinese tend to think in, like, you know, two positives makes a negative, you know, that kind of thinking is very deeply rooted in Chinese culture. And it helps me with my stand-up comedy act in English too. And the flip side is like, I didn't quite understand a lot of cultural stuff in English. For example, at least in the American stand-up comedy scene, I didn't know that puns are really looked down upon. And I had someone telling me, hey, this is a good pun. If your English is good enough, you'll be able to understand it. And I was like, oh, puns are really a good indication of how well you master the language. So I started to learn puns, and eventually I was able to come up with puns myself. And then I realized that, actually people hated it. You know, it took me like a couple of months to figure this out. But, you know, there are cultural issues that kind of make me, I guess it takes longer for me to get used to the way an American audience see things, I guess. But I heard that puns are more tolerated in England. I don't quite know. So is that true, Ben, or Olga, or Yuriko?
I think it's probably subjective. Like, depends on the audience you get.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I had some British friend. They were saying, "Oh, we just did a show with Discovery, and they wrote some puns there." And I was like, "Oh, this feels awful." They're like, "Oh, no, in Britain." For me, okay. Well, besides that, I feel that even though changing cultural settings is really difficult and painful sometimes, but it does give you something to work with. A lot of people say but or front with the kind of inspiration. Oh, hello. I'm sorry.
Hello? Oh, yeah. I was about to figure out.
Quiet myself again?
Yeah, I think there's some connection issue. So yeah.
Oh,
yeah. No worries. Yeah, Joe will rejoin us very soon. I mean, what can be better than a streaming comedy panel and having people suddenly disappear? I think we're still doing good. We will have Joe back very soon. So maybe moving to Olga, what do you think is the best and worst bring to you by your native culture on your comedy composition?
Oh, this is a really tough one. I've been thinking about it since you asked the question, and I wonder how much I'm blaming on Russian culture and how much I'm blaming on just my family genetics. Because I keep thinking, well, I'm very stubborn, and I'm like, is that a Russian thing or is that just something that I got from my grandpa? So it could go either way. My grandpa was a Russian man, so there you go. I suppose the best thing, especially just for me specifically, in my work, like in my working style, I find that the Russian pragmatism, that's almost a Soviet pragmatism, is something that I find quite valuable in my daily life and in my comedy. And I feel one of the reasons why I'm so desperate to create comedy shows that deliver nutritious knowledge to audiences is because of my Soviet pragmatism. That's like, if they walk away not knowing anything new, well, they've just wasted an hour. So I think it's that. And I think the negative is definitely the sort of entrenched traditional norms that are still within me. And maybe on the surface, I've erased them, but within me is still like a breadth and wealth of internalized misogyny that is going to take decades to deprogram. Thank you.
I forgot to mute myself. Thank you. That's a very interesting answer. And welcome back, Joe.
Okay, yeah.
You're good now. Yeah.
What did I miss? Sorry.
I don't know. I missed a big part of your speaking. I don't know about other people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But no worries, we're all good. So let's move on. I know, Yuriko, we still need you to answer this question, but I'm thinking of maybe we've talked a lot about our culture and, as a comedian, you're always being judged by your audience. I feel maybe this is a time for us to judge our audience a bit too. I would like to know, what do you guys think is the worst persona of the toughest crowd when you go to a comedy perform? What is the most hated audience? So I think it's actually a fair question. As I say, comedy is actually interaction art. It's not only about the performer, it's also about the listener. So I feel it's actually also an art for the audience, try to be a good listener to help the comedian build a better performance. So Yuriko, I will hand the tough question to you to start first, if you don't mind. What do you think is the worst persona of the toughest crowd?
It's the tough question, but maybe racist, sexist, and maybe the audience that the audience that forget to mute themselves, so that making noise when we are doing the online gigs. But yes,
live
thank you. But the thing is, yes, it's it's we are having like in the last few weeks on the news, and it just had emotional exhaustion, and the misogyny, sexism, and the racism, and it's just gets me. But it's not just new thing. It's been around, and hopefully us comics telling the stories, and then people will open their minds, and it's a tough question, and
my bad, sorry.
no, not at all.
No, you give a great answer, and it's funny. Like after you say you hate the audience who forgot to mute themselves, like all of us, like instantly all muted ourselves. But feel free to unmute. It's a roundtable discussion. And Ben, how do you think is the persona of the toughest crowd?
I agree with Yuriko. People who don't want to listen and people who want to make it more about them than us or the performer. For me, it tends to be large groups of intimidatingly drunk white men. I once played Portsmouth Football Club, and also I went to Aldershot to play a gig in front of a lot of gentlemen who were in the military, and it felt gladiatorial. Just the amount of abuse being hurled at me, and I look like them, so I can't imagine at all what it would be like if I didn't. In a strange way, though, I quite like that combative. I can't say the word combative experience, because I'm a bit of I don't know, an imp, a mischief maker, and I quite like standing on stage, winding the audience up if they're hostile. I mean, I've not yet had a bottle thrown at me, but I have been aggressively marched out of a room before.
That's tough. And how about you, Joe? How do you think is the worst persona?
Well, I can't say worst. There's only worse, I guess. Like Ben, I also performed the stand-up comedy act once in front of an Asian crowd. Everybody was Asian except the family of a mayor in Quincy, Massachusetts. That mayor was running for re-election, and he hired me to do a stand-up comedy act, and it was like 45-minute show on the contract. So I did my 45-minute. Nobody's laughing, and but then I figured, oh, the contract says 45 minutes. I got to finish that. So after the show, one Asian guy came up to me and said, "Hey, can you speak Cantonese?" I was like, oh no, the entire audience are Cantonese speaking crowd, and nobody speaks English or even Mandarin, and I don't know how to speak Cantonese. So that was a really tough show, But I still just did it according to the contract, as a good Chinese guy, I guess. That's one of the toughest crowd I've ever performed in front of.
Wow. I more feel like the crowd is so genuine and so kind by sitting there for 45 minutes without understanding what you're talking about. So it's probably the best persona rather than the worst.
Yeah, but
yeah,
that's mainly because they're eating dim sum. It's really delicious. So they don't mind me talking while they're eating, I guess.
That's fair. I think delicious food just as good comedy. So
yeah.
How about you, Olga? What do you think is the toughest crowd's persona?
I agree with most of the things that have been said. I think genuinely with audiences, it's so much about mindset. Like it's the same as if you are told you're about to watch the best movie ever, it has 1 million Oscars, and then you go watch the movie, versus you're about to watch the worst movie ever and everybody hates it, and you watch the same exact movie. It's so much about mindset. And so most of the time when an audience comes in to watch a comedy gig, they want to have a nice time, they want to laugh, they want to have a good time, so that's wonderful. But occasionally there is a little thing called competitions. Specifically, I don't know if anybody's familiar with something called gong shows, where the audience is given the opportunity to hit a gong if they don't like the comedian. So that changes the mindset from I want to have a good time to I want to hit the gong, because hitting a gong is so much fun. And so they want to dislike you, they want to judge you, and then the mindset is completely changed. And I would say that an audience with the mindset, I want to hate you so I could criticize you in public, is probably the worst mindset any audience member can have.
Wow. That's a very special experience. I kind of curious about this type of show, to be honest. Thanks for letting us know this like a new type of comedy competition. But really, thanks for sharing. And also, as I said, I think comedy is a collaboration art. So not only the job of a comedian, but also a job of us, like the audience, like learn how to listen, learn how to help, will actually help us engage the best into the comedy art. So really thanks for sharing the insight. And next question, I think that's an interesting question, especially we are based on Oxford China Forum. We know there's a general pressure of young people try to prove themselves, to prove they're the best. But also, as I observed in the comedy scene, it's sometimes like by proving you're the best, sometimes create an intimidating killer rather than create empathy. So I'm just curious, like, how do you think when working as a comedian, do you need sometimes even downgrade your skill or talent a bit just to show you're very funny or create a sense of empathetic humor? So maybe I will let Joe start first.
Oh, this is a really tough one. It's a very fine balance every comedian has to strike. I heard somebody once said that a lot of the times the audience laugh at your jokes not because your jokes is great, but more because they like you as a person. So I think Ben mentioned before, comedy is biological, so it's to are in the first 10 seconds and then close the distance between you and the audience. And that's really important. And that's worth spending the time. Of course, if you can do that with a joke, it's even better. But if you can't, I think the having this relationship with the crowd is really important. It's probably more important than jokes.
Thank you. And how do you think about that, Ben? Because you are comedy educator, probably you also have like different perspective in terms of how to build your own persona on the stage to get more empathy.
I agree with Joe that I think the relationship with the audience is sacred, and building that, manufacturing that, administrating it, maintaining it on stage over a long period of time is a real skill. But it's certainly comprised of a number of, I guess, tactics that one can learn without a doubt. And I suppose regarding empathy, I think if I'm in a space that I'm treating myself well as a practitioner, and also whilst I'm on stage, if I can get myself into a space where I'm having fun and I'm excited about what I have to share, then I'm usually in a space that I'm also acutely aware of the audience and listening to their needs, and far better at engaging with them using all the skills that I've learned. So I think maybe through that empathy is shown. Apologies if I've misjudged the direction of your question.
No worries. I mean, it's a tough question. Also, like Joe said, I even feel bad. Like I start to make this comedy panel looks a bit painful. Like everyone's thinking in this deep thought mode. But I think that's a great discussion. And because of the time constraint, I'm actually gonna ask the last question for the roundtable panel before we hand to the audience Q&A. So last question. Okay, please relax because this is gonna be a very down to earth simple question. It's basically I want to ask any suggestion to our audience who want to step in to try some stand-up comedy acting there, or alternatively do you have any pushback suggestion to warn us not getting into it? So maybe I will let Olga to start with this question just to give some suggestion for our audience.
Do it. You gotta do it. I think it's wonderful. Maybe take a class. I know Ben is teaching some, so I just it's the greatest feeling in the world to have a terrible time on stage, have nobody laugh, walk off stage, and realize I'm still here. I didn't die. The world didn't end. And nothing collapsed, and I can just keep moving. And then when the fear leaves your body, you just feel like nothing can take you down, and that's great.
That's amazing. How about how about Joe? What's your suggestion given to our board audience? Yeah.
Okay, I'll just say you gotta like what Olga said, you gotta do it, and you have to take it very seriously, prepare, do your best. And I always say that if you fail something again and again, but in the end, you still want to do it, that could be your calling. So you just try it really sincerely and see if you like it or not. And if you really like it, just keep doing it, because there's so many things you can do with comedy. And if you're in China, you can try it in my club. Just like this is my club logo, by the way. So, and if you're in London, just go with Ben or Olga or Yuriko. Ask them for advice. I mean, so the key thing is really just writing and doing it, and there's no other way around it. So, good luck, guys.
That's great. Thank you, Joe. And yeah, Ben, what's your suggestion? Aside from taking your workshop, which is really great, so highly recommend it. But aside from that, what's your suggestion?
Thank you. I didn't realize that today's forum was about promoting my workshop exclusively. Thank you. Give it a shot and try and find a way to make it fun for yourself. It is a marathon made of lots of sprints. So as Joan has mentioned, prepare as if you were a sports person. And as Olga's also mentioned, if it doesn't go right, it's okay. There's tomorrow. Keep showing up. That's the biggest and best bit of advice I ever got from the brilliant comedian Paul Foote. Keep showing up.
That's brilliant. Yeah, keep showing up. And Yuriko, your term, I mean, as someone who started stand-up by second language, I think you also have lots to bring to our audience. So what's your suggestion here?
I wrote down, and it said, do it! Do what you love!
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, do it. You love to you love to do it. Do what you love, and just forget about everything else. Just do it. That's it.
Thank you. I think we really appreciate that, and we really appreciate you're the only one who brings so much props without expectation. Keep having things coming down. I think that's great energy, and that's the energy we like for the people who also enjoy comedy. So really thank you guys. It's amazing, roundtable discussion. I personally don't want to end this, but I see the clock is ticking. So let's move to the next, but even more exciting session, which we're gonna bring our audience in to ask some question. And let's say whether they are as tough as me for the question. So can we have some audience in for their questions? Oh, okay. So I see Jia Yao is raising the hand. So I don't know actually how to unmute. Jia Yao, can you unmute yourself? Yeah, do you want to give a quick introduction about yourself and then talk about your question? Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I noticed that many comedians do joke about themselves, and these are really nice pieces which I really love. And I just wonder how you guys find balance between, making these things funny and cool while not going to the degree of feeling self-degrading. And I think this is a really good lesson to know. It's just really smart. So I'm wondering about that.
Thank you. So yeah, how to create humor without self-degrading. Maybe let's start with Olga.
That's a great question. I mean, it is genuinely a great question, and if I find out the answer to it, I will have solved comedy. I think it's something that you learn. You can't really. It's not something that I can like come up with a rule for. A lot of the time when you're sort of being self-deprecating in a way that is relatable to other people. So this is a terrible thing that happened to me, or really embarrassing thing that happened to me, and I know for a fact that other people in the audience likely experience that thing. Then that's easier. And that's safer. I think an extra challenge in being self-deprecating on stage as a woman is a lot of the time I will see, and I don't want to make sweeping generalization, but I'm going to make a sweeping generalization. Specifically, older men will see me self-deprecate and think, oh, this woman has no idea what she's doing, she's out of control, when in reality I'm very much in control, and I'm in control of what I'm saying, and I'm choosing to say these things. And so that is a very difficult sort of tightrope to walk when you're saying, oh, I'm making fun of myself, don't worry, I am aware of what I'm doing. So yes, it's honestly just trial and error.
Amazing.
Yeah, just to build on Olga, I feel that self-deprecating humor is great. I think the boundary is whether or not to make your audience feel degraded. You know, as long as you're not degrading the audience or any member of the audience, it's fine. You know, whatever you want to say about yourself, that's okay. That would be my rule.
How about you, Ben?
I think that's a really good piece of advice. When I'm up there speaking about things that are perhaps traumatic lived experience, I try to use the meter of, can I responsibly steer the audience through this? i.e., are they going to either laugh at me and feel good about themselves, or can they walk away directly knowing that I've tried to impart some learning that might help them outside of this situation? And if I can't do those things, then I have to I have to think, maybe now's not the time. I need some more time until I understand this more thoroughly and feel I can communicate it more clearly. But I think self-deprecation is an amazing way, especially at the top of a show, for very quickly creating a bond of trust between you and the audience, because you show you're not a threat, and also you show that you give them permission to laugh at you, and therefore they feel that there's a balance. There's somewhat of a balance in the room, despite the fact you have the microphone and maybe you're physically a little bit above them. You give that permission for the hierarchy to be leveled.
That's such a nice answer. And how about you, Yuriko? How do you think about this topic?
Everyone's saying amazing things, so I'm like taking notes. But it's so true that so yes, I like self-deprecate jokes as well, and I think in Japan we do have self-deprecate humor a lot, I think. So I'm used to hearing those jokes and then laugh. So yes, but as Olga said, if you do too much self-deprecate joke, and some people might misunderstand that, you know, it's like, no, it's the craft, but some people might like really think I'm all over the place. So yes, it's great. I'm learning. I'm learning, but yeah. So it's self-deprecate. I like self-deprecate jokes, and if you want to write that type of jokes, and yes, go for it. But yes, with love. I don't know what I'm saying. See, I'm doing self-deprecate.
And it works. It works.
Can I give a real example of how that happened to me?
Yeah.
Very quickly. I had a joke in the very beginning when I started. The joke was, I don't wear a watch because I have a biological clock. And there was a review in a newspaper that said Olga was disorganized. She forgot her watch. Genuinely.
What?
So a lot of the time there's not a lot of trust in women making jokes on stage. So
wow. So the reviewer took it literally, and
I think
could have been more organized.
Yeah, I think that reporters should do stand-up comedy. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I think that story, if you're speaking it now, is a very good piece of joke. So at least we all love 5 of us. But yeah, thanks Yao to ask this such a nice question, and thanks Joe, Ben, Yuriko, Olga to answer, because I hear lots of a human touch when we say, especially Ben, I think you mentioned, it's basically about giving the permission for the audience to set the power hierarchy. So I think that's actually one thing's really, I think we should appreciate more about comedian is sometimes they're giving out this vulnerability for the other people to build a trust, to build a rapport and make people laugh. So actually there's a very kind part about comedy. So really appreciate that. And also, I think Olga, you mentioned like as a female comedian, which I feel quite interesting, like sometimes people just don't give you enough trust, which can cause some misunderstanding when you try to make a joke really landed. So from your point of view, and also maybe Yuriko, what do you guys think the industrial or just us as audience can help do better to support the female comedian, especially in this industrial, which is still quite male dominated? Is there any suggestion for us, like what we can do to make this ecology better? Or Yuriko, do you want to start?
Yes, please watch. There is some, female comics out there, but somehow also people think there's not enough female comics, and there are so many. So research, have a look, and then it's many, and then like we go to clubs and everywhere in the country, and we are doing the gigs and the spots. So just watch, and then realize lots of things that in the head were outdated. The women are this, women are this. No, that actually it's actually that. So
yeah, I think I feel the sentiment.
Just I don't know how to put in words, but yes, just watch it, and then please realize it that it's just so many things are happening, wonderful things are happening, and that it's industry changing, and it's an exciting moment. So please support.
Yeah, thank you. And how do you think about it, Olga? What do you think is the support you wish you would have, but it's not there today, and to kind of help more female comedians get engaged in this industry?
I don't even think it is about more female comics doing it, because I think there's a lot of female comics doing it. And I think there are, and beyond that, there are all, like, I think maybe just the average comedy consumer consumes comedy in a very casual way. And so you're sort of gravitating towards something that's familiar to you and things that are comforting and things that you already know. So I suppose the one ask I would have of a comedy audience is, if you've enjoyed the sort of comedy specials that you've seen on Netflix, genuinely, like, just put a little more time in it, because just like Yuriko said, there's so much stuff there, you just need to look. And I realize that a lot of people don't have the instinct to look, but if you do, you will find incredible things. And like, to this day, and I watch so much comedy, every now and then I will watch something and I'll say, I have never seen anything like this before in my life. And that is an incredible feeling, and you will be able to get that feeling so much if you just dig a little deeper.
Cool. Really, thanks for the suggestion. And yeah, I think, as you said, it's probably not the gender thing, but it's more about actually having the environment and having your work to see what is there, and to feel free to explore this like comedy market, and you can find like lots of witty insight and reflective jokes which fits your taste. And do we have, I think we still have time for another audience question. So can we bring another audience up for some question? Really thanks to our tag team who are helping to coordinate all of this thing. And I call them tag team, but it's actually just like group of like 3-4 people who are working hard behind the scenes. So really appreciate them. So let's see. If not, I would actually want to ask another additional question. And I would like each of you to give me an answer in one sentence, or maybe with a little bit explanation, because it's hard. So as a comedian, do you think there's a different superiority level or hierarchy of different type of laughter? If you think there is, which type of laughter you value the most when you're doing the performance? So Joe, I will start from you.
Oh, that's a great question. It's hard for me to answer with one sentence, though.
I know, because I immediately regret.
Yeah, I would say the best type of laughter is when the audience actually takes a minute to think and then laugh. That would be the best laughter.
How do you think about that, Ben?
I love that type of laughter where it feels like a wave rolling back across the audience as people catch up with the joke. I also am particularly fond of, and it's very rare I've managed to do this, but create a piece of comedy that's pure in a sense. It transcends boundaries of division. A child or an elder could enjoy it. And that kind of huge belly laugh that hits everyone at the same time is euphoric.
That's great. And what's your opinion, Olga, in terms of what is the type of laughter you value the most?
Loud and with claps, I would say, is probably up there. But I'd say the first that came to mind, I can't say that it's the best, but the first that came to mind that I really, really enjoy is any laugh that feels like an inside joke. So whether it's a callback to something earlier in the show or something that organically happened in audience interaction and just was off the cuff, it feels like this is a joke just for us in this room right now. And it feels really special and it really ties everyone together.
That's great. Yeah. So how do you feel about the laughter we just hear your forgot to bring the watch story? How do you rate it? Is it good enough?
Wait, about you laughing at it?
Yeah, about we all laughing.
That's like a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's good to know, yeah, because we now have a better concrete idea of your rating system. Yeah. How about you, Yuriko? What do you think is the type of laughter you value the most when you do a perform?
I love all the laughters, but I don't know if I'm answering the question right, but when I do new material nights and when I try the new joke and when I get the laugh, I thank you, and then I think that laughter remains in my brain forever. so that's that's the laughter I love.
That makes sense. It's more like a recognition for the material test. So that's great. Yeah, so thank you all for sharing the insight. Thanks for Jayao, the audience who just bring us a great question in terms of like a self-depreciating. And also thanks, Ben. Thank you, Yuriko. Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Joe. It's really nice to have you guys today. I mean, as a hosting, it's very bad for me because I don't really have an ending script for me because it's just like the whole discussion.
亲爱的观众朋友们，大家好！随着我们的喜剧板块徐徐落幕，咱们的论坛也临近尾声。我是潘周丹，牛津大学圣彼得书院的博士学生，也是本次论坛的直播导演。在此和大家分享一段一路筚路蓝缕的心路历程。牛津中国论坛，今日青年，明日世界。其一，论坛。谈者，大典之高台也。高台常有，而大典不常有。正是因为诸位嘉宾在这里坐而论道，才得以让咱们的论坛蓬荜生辉，而作登坛拜将之大典。继而不禁试问，谁又不想去在这须臾的一生登上自己所仰望的高坛呢？于是有了其二，牛津。顾名思义，大约1000年以前，一群后生和几位大儒顺着泰晤士河溯流而上，来到了一个有牛马的京都，便在此安营扎寨，修建了坐而论道的书院。今时今日，当我再一次有幸地踏入这里，直面这所学术殿堂的时候，第一反应竟然是被这所学校厚重的言论压得喘不过气来。无数次的夜不能寐，叩问自己，我应该做到些什么，才能够成为合格的书院后生？我必须做到些什么，才能不愧于往圣之绝学？这让我想起王安石在他30岁的时候曾写下过：行年30已衰翁，满眼忧伤只自宫。他那满腔的抱负给他带来的却是才刚刚到了30岁，却衰老的像一位老翁，满眼的忧伤啊， 都是自己在攻击自己罢了。诚然呢，这个时代我们青年有太多的事情想去实现，同时也让我们感到彷徨。于是有了其三，中国。回望100年前，这个1000年的文明古国正处于其有史以来的至暗时刻。那这100年来又发生了什么，得以让现在的我们在历经全球工位危机之后，才如大梦初醒一般，真切地体验到了一个古老的文明活力与韧性。对于这100年以来的一代又一代的志士仁人，我想他们心中也曾体验到过抱负之心切，彷徨之心哀，于是一次次的困于心，恒于虑而后作。不经意间，正是这点点滴滴的后作，搭建起来了青年们理想与现实的桥梁。正是这点点滴滴的后作，汇聚成了无数的风雨兼程。正是这点点滴滴的后作，过尽千帆，铸就了这100年来的两岸猿声啼不住，轻舟已过万重山。西方世界里，那场始于意大利的文艺复兴，名为 Rinascimento， 直译为重获新生。我们的复兴之路官方译名为 Rejuvenation， 字面意思是回到青年人时候的状态。我想，相较于重获新生，这谋求新年人一般的困于心、恒于虑而后作，恰恰是这个古老的文明最年轻的底色。2021牛津中国论坛，今日青年，明日世界。接下来，我们热烈的有请西方文艺复兴之乡意大利比萨大学毕业的本届论坛首席嘉宾 ，WWF 世界自然基金会全球总干事 Marco Lambertini 博士，将为我们带来的闭幕致辞。Lambertini 博士是 WWF 总部第5任总干事，作为全球卓越的保护机构领头人，他和国家政要、企业高管以及社会团体一同齐心协力，为人与自然的和谐共生而努力。欢迎 Marco Lambertini。Ciao, dottore Lambertini. Tutto bene? Come sta la sua famiglia? Unisce al nostro OCF.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you about the state of the planet and our journey towards sustainability. We're living at truly extraordinary times, and we're all wondering whether we are heading towards a tipping or turning point in our relationship with the planet, with the natural world. WWF this year is 60 years old. We have 60 years of action for nature, and an mission that I think is never been more relevant than today. Building a future where people and nature live in harmony, building a future where people and nature both thrive. Difference from just a few decades ago is that today we know a great deal of how the Earth systems work. We know a great deal of the impact we are having, the reasons of that impact, and also what solutions we should deploy. Scientists are calling today's time as the Anthropocene, the age of humans, to signify the disproportionate dominance and impact that one species, our species, is having on the natural systems. We took several 100,000 years to reach the first billion of people on the planet. It took another century after that to double that number. A few decades to reach 3 billion. And from 1960, we've been adding 1 billion every decade, 1 billion more people every decade. We're going to reach probably 2050, or even just before, with a population of around 10 billion people. After which, the estimates are that population will begin to decline and level. But this is one side of the story, population growth. Related to our footprint. The other side is, of course, consumption. And this is what the scientists are calling the great acceleration of use of natural resources started again around 1960, just 60 years ago, exponentially growing over time. Whether you look at energy, water, fish, food on land, everything has been exponentially growing in consumption. And that clearly unsustainable and putting a lot of pressure on the planet, where we are taking more resources out of the natural system than actually the natural system can replenish and restore. And this is a graph that shows visually an element of our impact, the conversion of natural spaces, where today we lost about half of the natural spaces on the planet converted to human-made environment, particularly agriculture or infrastructure, cities. And then 75%, two-thirds of the planet, ocean and land, has been in some way altered by human activities. But there's another dimension to this as well. So that was David Hunter. You could listen to his voice, and it's basically summarizing the state of the biomass of mammals on the planet, where today 94%, it's 96% of that biomass is made of humans or domesticated livestock, and only 4%. All the other mammals, all the elephants, rhinos, zebras, monkeys, rodents, everything else, it's only 4%. And just maybe a couple of centuries ago, a century ago, this situation was exactly the opposite. So that all signifies the impact that we are having. And if we're not worried enough already, these are some figures that symbolize exactly what I just talked about. We crossed the 1 degree of global warming pre-industrial times. We know that we are driving 1 million and many more that we don't even know, that not even known to science, species to extinction. 90% of the commercial stocks of fish is either fully fished or overfished, and the figures could continue. So it's a serious situation. These slides are about to create a sense of concern, but also just saying bluntly, the situation is very serious. There is no room for complacency. We're also beginning to see new things we've never seen before, like massive die-off of coral reefs in the ocean, warm waters in the tropics, in the equator, that are becoming so hot that even corals that have been around for 250 million years can't cope with it, and they die in large quantities, so much that today we already lost half of the coral reefs in the world. But that applies not just to the coral reefs, but to other ecosystem systems on the planet. These are examples of critical systems that are so affected by our activity, climate change, or nature loss, that are reaching a tipping point, from the Amazon rainforest to the monsoon systems, the Gulf Stream in the Atlantic, and other systems that are really maintaining the balance of the planet, the balance that allowed our civilization to develop so much. And to put it simply, we're dealing with two challenges, interconnected. One is climate change, the other one is loss of nature, loss of biodiversity. One exacerbates the other. Climate change is exacerbating loss of nature, forest fires, and other things like that are actually contributing to climate change. So we need to break this negative feedback loop. In order to do that, we need, in a nutshell, a plan that allow us to bend these two curves. The curve of a global CO2 equivalent emissions that needs to stabilize and go down, and the curve of loss of biodiversity, then the country needs to stabilize and go up and restore. And everybody has been shocked by the last few years examples of mega forest fires from the Amazon to Australia, the Arctic, even Africa. And the fact that these are actually connected very much to the land conversion I was mentioning earlier. But if you look at the reasons behind it, it's really food production. And we'll see later some specific food commodities more than others. And so the food ecological footprint I want to highlight is probably the main driver of climate change and nature loss today. I said that we know a lot, and I gave some examples, but perhaps the most exciting thing in this tsunami of bad news is that we don't just know, we actually beginning to understand the consequences of all this, consequences for us. And there is a growing business case, for example, of nature, the importance of nature to our economy, on how our economy depends on nature. Half of the global GDP somehow depends on natural, healthy natural ecosystems. The ocean, for example, if you put together all the goods and services that provides to us, will account for $2.5 trillion per annum, which is equivalent of a GDP, this will be the gross marine product, the GMP, of the seventh largest economy. So, massive economic contribution already from nature to our well-being and economy. And it's not just about risk of losing that value, it's about also the opportunity that by embracing a transition of our economic model towards activities that don't affect the climate, don't affect nature, we can generate more value, estimated $10 trillion by 2030, and more jobs, estimated 400 million jobs in a green economy by 2030. And of course, then there is COVID that has given us this additional warning signal about our broken relationship with nature and the impact it can have on us. This is, most likely a wild animal traded from Africa to China has triggered a massive pandemic that has brought the economy and our lifestyles on their knees. And we know that this zoonotic diseases that originate from animals and jump to humans, are 70% of the emerging diseases for humans. And there's been an escalation over the last few decades, connected particularly to the way we trade wildlife around the world, because wildlife carry these viruses, the way we are connecting deforestation to exposure of humans to these viruses, and industrial farming that brings animals so close together that create perfect conditions for the explosion of these pandemics as well. So in a nutshell, we're beginning to understand that by through our broken, unbalanced relationship with nature, we're actually affecting economy and society. Our well-being, our health, and so preserving the ecological infrastructure, the ecosystems of the planet, oceans, forests, and the whole biodiversity. And we actually is the only way to guarantee a prosperous economy and a healthy and stable society. And so nature conservation is not anymore only a moral or a ecological issue, but actually it is also an economic, a health, a development issue, an equity issue as well. And this year we are having a fantastic opportunity through a number of global agreements around climate, around nature, and under the umbrella of the Sustainable Development Goals to really put us on course to achieve what should be the twin global goals for our civilization in a modern world. A carbon neutral, zero net emission future where we stop destabilizing climate, and a nature positive world, a nature positive economy where we reach a zero net loss of nature, but then we will start restoring nature and reach a positive outcome with more nature by 2030 than actually we had in 2020. And that's what we advocate as WWF, a nature positive target by 2030, ambitious, but this is what science is telling us we need to do, alongside a climate target. And the nature target is about protecting and restore at least 30%, 1/3 of the planet natural systems. We already lost, as I said, half of them, and manage sustainably the rest so that you can stop the loss of nature on the planet. And that will benefit species, ecosystems, and the services that those ecosystems provide to us. And then there is the whole issue of the human footprint, and particularly looking at the way we produce and consume energy and the way we produce and consume food. There is also very important the way we build and develop infrastructures in cities. And then clearly the financing of all this, because the financial flows today in the world are actually driving unsustainable food production, fossil fuel-based energy production, and unsustainable and destructive infrastructure. So by redirecting those financial flows from bad to good, so that we continue to develop, we continue to generate income and economy, we continue to provide opportunities for development to developing economies, of course, we do that in a way that is sustainable, is in balance with the planet, is not destroying. And technology and planning today is in a position to actually achieve that. It's possible, it's not impossible. And that's where there is also the final dimension and close the conversation with. It's about systems, it's about the way we produce, it's about technology, it's about regulation, but ultimately it's also about our culture. It's about a mind shift, a mindset shift that brings us to stop taking nature for granted, to value nature for the incredible services it provides to us already, losing which will bring destruction to our civilization. And so, as I said before, nature conservation is taking a different step and rising in the political and societal agenda as something which is not just the right thing to do morally, but actually is the right thing to do because otherwise we're going to pay the consequences of that. And that's a real cultural revolution, which is, I think, happening, combining the duty that we have, to coexist with the nature that we don't own. We're not the owners of the planet, but we coexist. We are fellow species that live on the planet, together with the importance of nature to us, both emotional and material. And I think that's a double commitment, moral, but also utilitarian, if you like, makes us discuss our plan to live sustainably as a plan to actually preserve life on the planet. This is about life at the end of the day, non-human life and our own life, particularly the life of our children, the younger generation that will actually experience even greater problems if we don't change course of action. And so that's, I hope, a presentation that has made you concerned and angry for what's happening in the world, but also excited about the opportunities for change. And we need everybody on board, governments, corporates, but also consumers. So all of us to really embrace this new vision, climate neutral, nature positive, equitable society and economy. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a great continuation of your meeting.
非常感谢 Lambertini 博士带来的精彩演讲。Dottore Lambertini, ciao, arrivederci。接下来，本届大会的官方战略伙伴 Wall Street Tequila 将为我们带来闭幕致辞。Wall Street Tequila 是一家首屈一指的全方位服务职业咨询公司，专注于帮助学生实现各种职业发展需求。他们的导师是来自世界知名金融和咨询公司的经验丰富的行业专家，并拥有覆盖纽约、旧金山、芝加哥、波士顿、香港、伦敦和上海等的全球导师网络。
Hello， 大家好。首先呢，非常感谢牛津中国论坛的邀请，可以让我成为特邀嘉宾之一，在这里和各位学弟学妹们做一个简单的分享。那在这里呢，也要恭喜牛津中国论坛圆满开办。那我先来做一个自我介绍，我叫 Annie， 我的本科是毕业于美国的宾夕法尼亚大学的沃顿商学院，然后在大学里面当时主修的是金融和会计两个专业。那毕业了以后呢，我是加入了 JP Morgan， 就是摩根大通的投资银行部，主要是辅导公司的上市、并购等融资活动。当时主要看的是房地产还有消费品两个领域。那在摩根大通之后的话，我就是加入了创业蓝海当中的一员。那在这里，在闭幕式也是希望和各位学弟学妹们简单的来分享一下，作为中国的留学生如何在国际的大舞台里面找到自己的定位，找到自己的人生意义和目标。 那其实对我自己而言，我觉得从摩根大通出来到创业，其实是迈出了人生的非常大的一步。因为其实不管是从上外附中，还是到宾大沃顿，还是到 JP Morgan， 可能在很多大人的眼里，我的身上是背负着非常非常多的光环和荣耀的，或者是所谓的标签。所以说，当我在决定辞去摩根大通投行工作的时候，其实身边99%的大人或者说学长学姐们，他们都是非常不支持的，就觉得我好像一下子就抛弃了好不容易用10几年的时间去积攒起来的这些所谓的光环也好，荣誉也好，就几乎没有人支持我，甚至还有人会在背后默默地说，哎，你怎么从投行跑出去了，去干中介了？对吧？所以说，其实当时我做出这个决定的时候，其实我自己的内心也是承受着非常大的压力的。但其实在选择的过程当中，我也是经过深思熟虑的。因为在整个跳槽的过程当中，其实创业也一直是我的这个考虑范围之一。因为我觉得就是我自己的人生，从小学到初中到高中，一直到大学，到我的第一份工作，其实都是属于也是在按部就班的完成，就觉得好像我的青春，我的人生如果就这么按部就班的去走下去，会有点没有意思。所以说其实一直是想要去尝试一下这个创业。但是创业的话，这么多形形色色的项目，其实最终聊下来，为什么选择 WST？ 其实有一个非常大的原因，因为对我而言，选择一个创业项目，其实就有点像找自己的男朋友或者老公一样。我觉得我是相信一个缘分的。当时我和 WST 几个合伙人聊的时候，其实我真的是有被他们感动到的。因为其实他们说，他们创办 WST 最初的理念，就是因为他们发现自己在面试的过程当中，尤其是在像纽约啊或者伦敦办公室这些大的这个金融中心面试的时候，会发现中国人的面孔真的是非常非常的少。有的时候，比如说一个中面公司就是邀请了50-60个同学来参加，但是中国人的面孔竟然只有1-2个，比印度人还少。所以说，在这种情况下，他们就会感觉就是有一丝丝的这个悲凉，对吧？因为其实中国的学生，真的其实大家都是很聪明的，而且都是很勤奋踏实的。那么他们也希望就是未来能够在这个华尔街，能够就是让更多的中国留学生有这样的机会，可以去到这些大公司去做实习或者去做工作。那我确实是一下子有被他们打动到，因为我自己觉得，相比在投行里面，可能我花了半年或者1年的时间，我做完了一个 IPO， 或者说我做完了一个 M&A， 在半年或者1年的时间里面，我能帮助到的仅仅是一家公司。但是在 WST 里面，也许我可以用半年、1年的时间，我去帮助到几十个、几百个，甚至成千上万个家庭和学生，去实现他们的国际化大梦想。那在这种情况下，所以我毫不犹豫的就选择了 WST。工作其实就是学生第一次从校园这个象牙塔的环境里面去走向社会，而你第一步怎么迈出去，很大程度会决定了你未来会怎么样去发展，或者说能够走到多高的一个平台。而我们知道，其实在春秋战国时代，整个社会是非常的这个欣欣向荣的。那原因是什么？是因为百花齐放，百家争鸣，整个社会当中是有非常多的流派，大家每一个人都能够发挥自己最大的价值和内涵的，所以整个社会的发展是非常的欣欣向荣的。就是大家会看到，就是整个社会、整个世界真的都已经开始变成一个地球村了。那在这个时候，咱们中国的留学生如何能够更好的站上这个社会舞台呢？这其实也是作为我本人，包括我在 WST 一直在思考的问题。那其实你要跨出一大步，我们就必须先迈出好正确的一小步。所以对于中国留学生来讲，那我觉得我们最大的意义和价值，就是能够在学生大学期间或者研究生期间，给到大家找到自己内心最大的竞争力和最大的核心价值。其实我觉得像咱们这个中国的留学生，对吧？从小到大的成长环境，其实相对来说是比较简单的，或者说是有迹可循的。咱们从幼儿园出来到小学、中学、高中，其实大家每一个人的路径都是非常非常的相似的。可 可能在中学里面，大家遵循的就是学好数理化，走遍天下都不怕。大家每一个人都会把语数外或者物理化学当作是人生就是最重要的学科，这样子去读。那么其实在中学的时候，大家也会发现，就是说每个人上学放学，每个人每天遵循的课表也都是一样的，很少会有需要真正你自己去做判断去做选择的时候。所以在这个时候，很多的中国留学生真正的迈出国门，走向国际大舞台，去国外念书的时候，就会开始面临一个人生最大的困难，就是选择。因为其实国外的大学处处存在着非常多的选择，到如何去选课，到如何去选专业，怎么去选社团，最终怎么去选择你自己的职业发展方向。那所以说，其实这也是为什么很多的中国留学生到了国外一度会不适应的原因。因为这个不适应不仅仅是来自于文化，更多的是来自于自己好像一下子迷失了方向，在这里没有一个老师会告诉你你该去上什么课，该做什么样的选择，仿佛你自己身边的外国同学都已经思考好自己未来到底要干什么，但你却发现有这么多的学科专业竟然是你听都没有听说过的。那在这个时候你就会陷入迷茫。那在这2年疫情爆发的期间，我能够观察到中国的留学生其实是有陷入到一层更大的迷茫的。因为疫情，所以很多留学生都没有办法出国，只能在家里上网课，或者即使留在国外也没有办法走入校园，也只能在自己的寝室里或者租的这个单间里面去跟着教授上网课。那这种情况下，有很多我身边的学生跟我说，天哪，这都开学了1年了，但是我竟然连我身边的同学都没有见过，所有都是发生在线上的。那这个时候大家就更加迷茫了，更加无可适从，我的未来到底要何去何从，甚至连下个学期到底是不是能回到学校我都不知道。但是我觉得也正是这1、2年的时间，在每个行业都经历非常大考验的时候，我觉得我们 WST 是发挥了更大的作用和价值的。那在这里我就举一个自己的例子吧，就在 WST 的话，其实我还是坚持每年会亲自带20-30个学生的。那么在我带的其中一个学生，她是一个纽约大学 NYU 大3的一个女生，那么我就是见证了她从她的迷茫期到最终找到她的人生方向的这样子一个过程。那这个女生的话，她是在应该是在疫情爆发前吧，在她大2的时候加入的我们的。那个时候大家都知道纽约大学其实是一个什么样的大学虽然说大家都在英国，但是或多或少听说过美国的纽约大学。这个学校是一个金融氛围非常非常浓厚的学校，基本上在这个学校里面，如果说你不从事金融或者商科活动别人会觉得你这个人有点格格不入，对吧？所以从而也导致了就是说学生在这个学校里面读书，整个 peer pressure 就是同校的竞争是非常的激烈，非常的大的。因为我自己也是从这个沃顿商学院出来的，所以说我能够体会到这一点。当时真的是有一个非常怪的现象，就如果说你们这一届的学生你们这一届的学生像我当时这一届的学生，基本上80%-90%会去金融。那如果这个时候你选择了去一个什么 NGO 或者说你选择了去一些什么传媒行业，那么别的学生可能第一会认为你不行，对吧？第二就会觉得你以后就跟他们不是一路人了。那在这个情况下呢，我这个学生就会觉得就是真的是非金融不可，对吧？也搞不搞得清楚自己到底是不是喜欢，就一门心思扎进去了。当时其实也有劝过他，就是说你是不是要考虑一下其他的方向，但是他就是说我就是要走金融就是这个方向一头走到底。但其实整个申请下来的效果并不是特别的理想因为就是确实真的不是自己感兴趣的领域，所以在学习的方面在就是整个准备的情况上面也都是非常的这个事倍功半吧，可能就是其他小朋友花3-4个小时能解决的事儿，他可能真的是10个小时也做不下来，所以导致最后可能真的都是挂在了第1轮面试。但是幸运的是，对他来说幸运的是，这个时候疫情爆发了，迫使他不得不从美国回来。为什么说疫情对他是幸运的？是因为他回到了国内，回到了国内之后，对他来讲，瞬间他和同学的距离变得稍微的远一点了。 也就是说，不是每天睁眼闭眼，周围都是要走 finance， 穿着这个黑色套装，踩着高跟鞋，噔噔噔去 info session 的这些 peers 了。对他来讲，睁开眼，可能真的是周围形形色色、各种各样专业方向的这个学生，还有自己的亲人家人。那在这种情况下面，我跟这个学生进行了非常深入的交流，也正好是这个时候，他自己也是比较沮丧，因为真的是上一个申请季走的不是特别的好，最后也没有拿到什么特别好的 offer。那在这个时候呢，我就跟他进行了一次非常非常深入的交流。我就记得，就是我把他约到我们办公室来，就真的是一早上过来，然后我们聊完了以后，天都黑了，然后我就发现我嗓子都讲不出话来了。但是我觉得还是非常欣慰的，因为我觉得通过那一整天的交流，当时他的爸爸妈妈也在，最终发现这个小姑娘其实她是非常具有这种市场前瞻性的，也就是说她对于这个社会发生的一些最新兴的事物接受度是非常非常的敏锐，非常非常的快的。那正好国内其实就是说这几年也是突然兴起了一些新兴的科技大厂，比如说像字节跳动啊、美团、拼多多这样的公司，那我们就会觉得这样的公司其实是非常非常适合他的，年轻有活力，而且也都是捕获市场上最前沿的动态。那在这些公司里面，其实也是能找到适合他的岗位的，比如说营销岗，或者是一些运营岗，对吧？就不是说你去了这些科技大厂你一定要做码农也是有这个偏前端的这个工作岗位的。然后在换了这个求职方向之后呢，这个学生就在短短的半个月里面就投出去了10几家公司，然后1个月里面他就已经收获了字节跳动、小红书等3、4家公司的 offers。 所以其实通过这个故事，我想跟大家分享的是，疫情期间虽然说大家没有办法出国啦，或者说只能在国内上网课，但是其实这也是一个契机，能够让大家真正的沉下心来，去找到最适合自己的方向到底是什么。因为你在这样子一个环境里面，身边没有太多能够干涉到你的这个人或者事物，你更能够去听到自己内心的声音，什么是你真正喜欢的，什么是你真正想尝试的。而每一个人他的距离因为这个疫情看似被分得更开了，但其实这也是能够给到大家更多的空间去尝试。比如说你留置在国内了，可能你晚上或者半夜要上网课，但是白天你会有更多的时间，你去做一些社会的实践，或者去做实习，去找到你的这个人生方向和人生目标。那说完了这个故事，其实还是想回到我的主题。那既然这个世界变成了一个世界村了，那对我来讲，我也非常希望有朝一日我们的这个中国的留学生群体能够真正的在这个国际的大舞台上面，各个行业里面都能看到我们活跃的身影。那这2天我听到的最振奋人心的新闻，就是我们的这个大导演赵婷女士她作为这个一个中国人，她得到了这个金球奖的最佳导演的这个奖项，并且也是在昨天刚刚获得了奥斯卡这个奖项的6项提名。那这个在国际电影节当中可谓也是一个爆炸性的新闻。那其实我们会发现，其实有很多很多的领域，不仅仅是这个电影领域，可能在艺术领域或者说在其他的领域，我们都会发现在国际的大舞台上还是鲜少有中国人抛头露面的。那么我也希望我们现在也可以做到像春秋战国时代一样，百花齐放，百家争鸣。在未来，在国际的大舞台上，各行各业里面，当大家提到这个领域的时候，大家都能说出来几个响亮亮的中国人的名字，而不是清一色的外国人的名字。那对我自己而言，我也希望自己能够继续在这个教育界里面发光发热，响应政府的号召，也希望能够带起更多的学弟学妹找到他们自己的核心价值力，找到他们人生的意义，让他们在国际化大舞台的各个领域里面发挥自己的专长，让世界更多的角落看到我们中国人的面孔，听到我们中国人的声音。
感谢 Wall Street Tequila 的精彩分享。下面我们把直播画面切换到上海的演播组，有请本届论坛副主席、独立活动总策划季彩璇为大家做论坛的闭幕致辞。
感谢丹哥，尊敬的各位观众、各位嘉宾。 为期4天的2021牛津中国论坛今晚正式闭幕。本期论坛由抖音公开课与牛津中国论坛联合发起，主题为今日青年，明日世界。在过去4天里，来自全球的专家、学者和社会工作者与我们一起探寻今日的青年将会如何缔造出明日的世界。从科技商业到文化思想，从理论学术到热点时事，从宏观世界至微观个人，我们以多元叙事的角度刻画着时代背景下中国青年的真实形象。牛津中国论坛 OCF 成立于2013年，是牛津大学官方注册认证的学生学术组织，如今已发展成海外规模最大、最为严谨的中国论坛之一。除了1年1度的主题峰会之外， OCF 已发展出包括讲座、报刊、访问等线下和线上活动。我们致力于汇集中国话题的领域专家，共同对变化中的中国进行深度的讨论。在此，我们要感谢大会官方战略合作伙伴 Wall Street Tequila、 大会官方合作伙伴北京卓越口腔、圣玛丽私人财富管理以及博言馆为我们提供友情赞助。另外，我们也感谢大会官方教育合作伙伴中国有影响力的中小学在线通识教育平台博雅小学堂为我们提供友情支持。新一代青年生于中国国力逐渐强盛的时代，经济的迅速发展奠定了我们的物质基础，国际化的进程也为我们打开了全球的舞台。在时代所赋予我们的机遇与挑战之下，作为青年，我们正以独特的方式谱写属于自己的乐章。同时，身为时代洪流的一部分，当代青年也随之悄然改变。在此， OCF 全体成员衷心地感谢论坛所有的出席嘉宾，感谢每一位观众的热心关注与参与，最后也感谢 OCF 每一位成员线上和线下的辛勤付出。从下个月开始，牛津中国论坛将会为您带来更多精彩纷呈的活动，欢迎大家关注我们的公众号和抖音频道，期待不久后我们再赴新知之约。今日青年，明日世界，再次感谢大家，我们后会有佳期。